Welcome to the Dom.Hockey podcast, proudly presented by Bench Rates. Created by a former hockey player, Bench Rates uses a proprietary algorithm to assign a true monetary value to a player's on-ice contributions and lets you compare that value directly to his cap hit. Bench Rates evaluates professional players across leagues worldwide, including the NHL and AHL. Learn more at benchrates.com. Also presented by McKean's Hockey. McKean's produces the premier NHL draft guide featuring more than 200 player reports and comprehensive rankings. They also deliver in-depth prospect coverage through their annual team-by-team rankings and their trusted hockey pool yearbook. Visit mckeans.com and subscribe for just $16.50 Canadian for 3 months. Good Saturday morning, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Dom.Hockey, the podcast. As always, I am joined by the one and only Mr. Dominic Tiano. Dom, how are you this Saturday? I'm excited. We have a great guest coming on again for us this week.
I'm just as excited as you are, raring to get going. Got some difficult questions for him, but doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well. It's another weekend, Saturday. Can't complain. Thrilled. Hockey season is right around the corner. So do you have anything that you want to let people know about before we bring on our guest?
No, let's bring him on and get her going.
We'll save all those things for later. So our guest today, he is the Director of Communications and the play-by-play voice of the Brantford Bulldogs. And with Dom Tiano was 2/3 of the best Bruins podcast ever. He told me to say that. The Three Amigos. Welcome, Reed Duthie. Reed, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Dom, it's great to see you again. And yeah, those were the days we used to do what was 2-hour podcast, about 6 hours of just the three of us sitting there going over the roster and players from all over the world. So some great times with you and Kirk Luedeke, our other amigo. And yeah, it's I miss those. I really do.
Yeah, they were great. Always got positive reactions from the listeners. It was at a time when, there weren't that many podcasts, but I still get asked to this day, bring back the Three Amigos. Time moves on, right?
Never stops.
Well,
so
I was just saying, Dom, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah, first of all, happy belated anniversary to you, Reed. I know it was your anniversary earlier this week. How are you and the family doing?
Doing wonderful. So since Dom and I have known each other, married my incredible wife, Celine, who allows me to do all this. She's an unbelievable rock that during the season, just what she's able to do with our family is amazing. And two little boys, Wyatt and Sawyer. Wyatt starting school this September. I can't believe it. I'm not going to be okay on the first day of school, but it's been an awesome summer. I've got to spend a lot of time with the kids, and we put a little kiddie pool on the front deck, so a lot of days just sitting outside in the sun and watching the boys splash around. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying it.
How old is Sawyer now?
So Sawyer will be 3 in 3 weeks.
Or in 3 weeks, because my youngest grandson, who is 5 months old now, is also named Sawyer. So there's another thing in common there, reader.
Well, it's amazing too, because one of the great ladies that I work with the Bulldogs, Liz, who runs our merchandise, does an incredible job designing it and setting it up. Her oldest son is named Wyatt, so we always joke about
there you go.
Her dad's name is Bruce too, so it's like some cosmic things going on. I don't know.
Unbelievable. So I promise everybody we will get to the Bruins, but first I want to talk about the Bulldogs a little bit, if I could, Reed. Rightly or wrongly, for a long time, the London Knights are considered a model franchise. But Brantford, going back to the days of Michael Andlauer owning the team, obviously who now owns the Senators. Steve Staios was GM, is now an NHL general manager. John Gruden, who coached Hamilton to a championship, became assistant coach in Boston, is now in the Toronto organization. Jay McKee, who I wanted the Bruins to hire desperately this summer, I believe is now in the Islanders organization. Even current ownership under Zach Hyman and his family. Um, Brantford's become a place where players want to go. Um, we'll talk about Cullen McCrate, the first Bruins prospect in the Bulldogs organization, and the trade to acquire him. You got guys like Gary Roberts and Brian Burke associated with the team. You've been there from the beginning through the whole thing. How have you seen it grow and become that model franchise?
Back to when Michael Andlauer made the deal with the Montreal Canadiens to move what was the AHL Bulldogs to Laval. They wanted their team closer. And he said, I will never let Hamilton go without hockey. At that time, he brought the Bulldogs in. And from that moment on in 2015, you could see the groundwork being laid that this was going to become a franchise where players wanted to come play and was going to be successful, because as Michael and Steve used to tell me, we don't do mediocrity. So they were going to make it work. And they did. By 2018, they won their first championship, right? And that was an incredible team that got put together by Steve Staios, with Will Bitton coming over, and then, of course, Robert Thomas and Riley Stillman and that incredible group that Matt Stroll, Mackenzie Amos, I could name them all. And then Steve quickly rebuilds it again coming out of the COVID year to that 2022 championship. And it really felt like from that point on, the Bulldogs became a place where players really wanted to be. Guys in the draft wanted to get to where the Bulldogs were picking. And now in the universe where NCAA players can come to the OHL before they go, and with the Hyman family buying the team, what they did is they came in after Michael Andlauer had run it so successfully and said, we don't need to change much of anything. We're just going to continue on this legacy and keep it moving forward. And with their connections to the NCAA, with both Zach and Spencer having gone down to the University of Michigan, they know everybody in American college hockey. So now there's connections everywhere. And players that are in the USHL, players that are in the BCHL, players that are in the OJHL, guys want to come to the Bulldogs and sign. And there's no greater evidence than that than Aiden Kelly, the Bulldogs' first-round pick in 2026, who desperately wanted to get to the Bulldogs at number 20 in the draft. And we were incredibly lucky that he did, and immediately signs with the team, came up to the draft for the second day from the rest of that day on, was there to greet every player that the Bulldogs selected. So there's the character component, there's the skill component, there's the component of the leadership, making it a place where everybody wants to be. And Dom, that's even before we get the new rink built and running in Brantford. Yeah. We're still in the old Civic Center, and players come in and see it and go, yeah, I want to play here.
Chris?
I was going to say, I'm glad he mentioned the NCAA, the rule change there, because from what you're saying, it sounds like at least the philosophy from ownership management is we don't really have to change. Obviously, some people are worried that there are going to be players that come in, they're one and done because they come, let's say they go from the USHL to the CHL and then they go straight to the NCAA after one season, where some players may need to percolate there for a couple of years. What have they set up so well so that those one and dones don't hurt them in their quest for competing, while also still being able to develop those that are there for 2 or 3 years, and how they, you know what I mean? Like, because we're always talking about balancing the philosophy of draft and develop versus win now. And Chris, that philosophy seems to have found a good mix.
That's a fantastic question, because that's something that everybody was worried about when the rule change came into effect, is how are we going to make this happen? Like, you see some star players like a Porter Martone, a Jack Ivankovich, Caleb Malhotra for us going to the NCAA. Oh, we're going to lose all these players. Well, first of all, for every one player that the OHL is losing to the NCAA, we're getting 8 or 9. So there's a ton of players that are coming up that we never would have had the access to before the rule change happened. specifically to Brantford, it's our scouting staff, and Spencer, Mike Galati, Justin Ishmael, and then our whole scouting group, Pete Goulet, who's a genius when it comes to scouting. What we've done is we've put into place a system where if you have a one and done, so take for account this season a Jason Musa up front. Jason Musa is slated to go to UMass, follow his brothers. He's going to be tremendous for us and then tremendous there. But while you've got him, you're developing another group of young guys underneath him, a Nathan Hod, an Owen DeGraff, a Camden McQuaig, these guys that are committed to universities, but you're going to have them for 2 years, maybe a third, depending on rosters and how it works out, but 2 years for sure. And then behind that, Finn Ellery, Trent Clough, and another group of young guys, Bo Christini, that are going to come up and fill the places that are left behind. So it's hard on the scouting staff because you've got to consistently find the players to backfill. But when you have a scouting staff that works together so well like ours does and is able to identify talent, bring them in, and teach them how to play Bulldog hockey, then you can consistently keep this moving where, okay, Jason Musa has a huge year and leaves. Owen DeGraff steps up. Owen DeGraff goes. Here comes Finn Ellery and Trent Clough. They go. The next group comes through. It's about finding that consistent balance to make sure that you can attract those one-and-done players in because you're going to need them to compete. You're going to need those high-talent guys knowing that they're one-and-done, but then having the pieces behind it where you get the guys who are 1 year guys, 2 year guys, 3 year guys, and 4 year guys if they still exist in the league by the time we get there. But it's been an amazing job from Spencer, Mike, Justin, all the way down through our scouting staff to go out, locate these kids, bring them in, get them signed, get them drafted, and continue this pipeline of talent that the Bulldogs are running. I mean, you look at our 2009 born players. This could be a huge draft year for the Bulldogs, depending on how the cards fall through the regular season, and that's just one draft year in particular.
Yeah, so two things you mentioned there, Reed, to bring me to Cullen McCrate. One is you lose guys, but you have access to these guys you never had before. He's one of them, and the one and done. You're only gonna have him for this year because he's off to the NCAA next year. But you paid a big price to get him.
Yep.
To Owen Sound.
Yep.
What was that process like? And I know you can't go into much detail about the behind the scenes workings, but was it something like you approached Owen Sound, or Owen Sound wasn't a place where he was willing to go and you talked to them about it? Was it Cullen wanting to come to Brantford and you working out a deal with Owen Sound? Tell us what you can about that.
So a little bit of everything. Cullen was drafted originally by the Owen Sound Attack. Smart move by Owen Sound because at the very least they get his rights, and if he doesn't commit to go to Owen Sound, then they're able to get assets in return for the rights to the player. Cullen wanted to come to the Brantford Bulldogs. It goes back to the connections through agents, the history with the Bulldogs, knowing Gary Roberts is here, Zach Hyman is here, Spencer Hyman, Brian Burke, and every night our gondola is packed with NHL scouts and managers, and we get a lot of traffic in Brantford. So he's playing in front of a ton of eyes. I know he's already drafted by Boston, but I mean, you still want to be in front of as many eyes as possible. So there was an attraction there to come to Brantford. Owen Sound under new ownership and management, Tyler Nother's there. We'd already done a deal with Owen Sound for Ryerson Leanders. Owen Sound wanted a goaltender. We were able to pick up Jet Kawaja in that deal. We wanted the defenseman with some PK Subban to his game, actually, seeing Jet Kawaja. But Cullen was an opportunity. And when you look at Cullen McCrate, it was an opportunity too good to pass up. I mean, you can't find a guy like that. He showed up to training camp. If you told me he was 25 years old and had already played 3 years in the show, I wouldn't have batted an eye. This is 6'2", 6'3", 210, 215 pounds of just big, physical, mean defenseman. And right away, you could see him command the ice at the OHL level. He's going to be a really good player in this league, and that's why he commanded such a price. Owen Sound knew what they had the rights to. They just couldn't get him to sign. So knowing that we were going to sign him, and Spencer is insistent on, he wants to make sure that deals are fair to both sides because he wants other GMs to do business with him. And, if you're constantly just, putting it to them, that they're not going to want to come back to you to do business. So the Bulldogs paid a fair price to get Cullen McCrate to come in and sign. I think he's going to be one of the best defensemen in the Ontario Hockey League this season, knowing he's one and done. But when you've got a group behind him of defensemen that are going to be there, there's another 5-6 guys that are going to be 2-year players that he's now teaching. That was what the Bulldogs really wanted. He's going to set the tone for the group of Abe Barnett, Jet Kuwaja, George Komodowski, Jean-Samuel Daigneault, those guys that are behind him to take the next step the following year. So it was a price well worth paying to go get Cullen McCrate from what we've already seen.
I love the fact that as you're giving the answer, you're kind of going through what Dom and I have tried to put out there so frequently, that there's more to a move than just a video game. Click the button and say, do we have a deal? Yes or no, as so many people like to say. It's easy. It's easy. It like you said, there's really, like you said, trying to keep the deal fair. People, you have to continually deal with the same group of people. And if you screw them over too many times, then they're just going to say, we're done working with you. They're going to blacklist your number.
Well, that's it. Especially in junior hockey. I mean, you look at the NHL, you got 31 other general managers to deal with. Spence has 19. So you got to have good relationships across the league. I mean, there's going to be times where, you beat a team to a signature of a player that they're not going to be so happy with you about, but you got to find a way to make it work and come back around and have a positive relationship, because you never know when you're going to be doing business later. And that's the big thing. I mean, the Bulldogs and the Petes are in the same division and pulled off the biggest trade of the offseason with Cooper Dennis going to Peterborough. They're going to look to take a run this season, and the Bulldogs getting the former number 1 overall pick in Caden McGregor. So you never know who you're going to end up dealing with, and you got to have a positive relationship. Division, conference, other conference, you got to work well with these guys because there's 19 of them. So somebody's going to have a player that you want. You got to be able to call them up and make a deal.
Absolutely. So moving on, Reed, when I ask myself who watches more European hockey than I do, your name is always at the top of the list. So I honestly can't think of anybody else. Your name just pops right up. So given the number of prospects the Bruins now have in Sweden and in Russia, well, we might add Russia to that now. And who would have said that 3 years ago even, right? Who are you most excited about watching this season? Whether it be Kotkov or Yemelyanov in Russia, or Olsen or Blanar or Pettersson or Bartholson in Sweden. Who excites you the most out of that European group?
Just based on pure excitement, it's Niels Bartholson.
Exactly. Thank you.
This is a kid that if he were 2 inches taller, would have been looking at a first-round selection. This kid, the ceiling on him doesn't exist yet. The skill level is through the roof. And when you see him play against players his age, you can really see the thought process, the ability to handle the puck. He doesn't shy away from contact either. That's the thing with Bartholson. Now, it'll be different when he comes to North American ice. Obviously, he's going to have to learn the angles and deal with the less time and space at a higher pace. But that's okay. That's part of the learning process coming over from Europe. The fact that Bartholson doesn't shy away from contact, plays through it, has kind of an attitude to his game that you want to see combined with his skill level. That's what makes him so exciting. We've already seen it in Sweden, and what he's done playing against players his age has been tremendous. So now the next step for him is going to be to get looks, extended looks at the SHL level or Allsvenskan level, depending on whether he comes up or whether he's loaned or however that comes about over the next season or two, and then get him to North America and see where it goes from there. But from a skill level standpoint, he's near the top of the list of Bruins prospects, just purely on skill level. And I think Bruins fans who didn't know him, didn't know the name, they're really going to be impressed as more and more comes out about Niels Bartholdson and more people get to see him actually ply his trade. I wonder a little bit about an NCAA stint for him, perhaps, but playing in Sweden is going to be a great start. And my only thought process with him is don't rush him. You're not in a position where you need to have him into the NHL next year. Let him take 2, let him take 3 years, let him develop, get a little bigger, a little stronger. That natural skill level's not going anywhere. And then you're going to really have a player on your hands. In Russia, I would hedge because Yemelyanov and Kotkov are together. So that pair, I think, is why in a lot of respects the Bruins did it, not to mention the fact that they were 2 of the best players in the MHL last year, and that's a league that's getting better and better all the time. But having Kotkov now with Yemelyanov was double purpose. Yemelyanov is an incredibly exciting talent. They stole him originally where they got him in the late rounds of the draft. His ability it translates to the next level very well. But getting Kotkov now, not only is Kotkov a great shooter, but now in having both of them, you make it a lot more likely that they'll both jump to North America because they can come together. One thing that we know about Russian players is they feel a lot more comfortable when there's other Russians in the room. So between having Murat Husnudinov, Yemelyanov, Kotkov, I like that they can all come together and kind of learn at the foot of Husnudinov, who will teach them what it's going to take for a Russian to transition to the National Hockey League. And guys, I love Vasek Mlynar. I love this kid. Big, physical, mean. He's got the long reach. He profiles as an NHL defenseman for a number of years. The question is, what is he? Is he a 5'6"? Can he get to being a 3'4" with that size and with his ability to move the puck and his ability to skate? But I think the Bruins have an NHL player there. Again, just going to take a little bit of time. But by the time they're finished, that deal for Brandon Carlo is going to net them Fraser Minton, who's going to be a Bruin for a long time. It's going to net them Vasek Mlynar, who's going to be an NHL defenseman, and they still have a first-round draft pick. Whether that ends up in a trade or whether they utilize it is to be seen. But that trade is going to go down as one of the biggest highway robberies the Bruins have pulled off in a long, long time.
Yeah.
The gift that just keeps on giving. Toronto.
Everybody forgets about Vasek Mlynar. I see it all the time when people talk about the trade. Is a Minton and a first-round pick. You're all going to be really surprised when the 6'5", 215-pound giant shows up in the National Hockey League and starts playing 19, 20 minutes a night.
Yeah. I'm tired of reminding people. Chris and I had him on the show 2 weeks ago, Chris.
Yeah, roughly,
I believe it was. Really humble kid. But I'm impressed how his game is improving steadily. He's at the Five Nations yesterday. I believe today is their 4th and final game. He's got a goal and assist through the first 2. But a really, really humble kid who I think, and Chris will correct me if I'm wrong, in talking to him, I don't think he realizes how good he is or can be.
Yeah, definitely very humble. And I think he's going to be in, I don't want to call it a rude awakening, but he'll definitely have a little bit of sticker shock, if you will, as Bruins fans that are local in this area rush to UMass when he gets there in a little over a year.
Well, you know who does know how good he could be is Adam McCrate, who speaks incredibly highly of him consistently. Every time there's a development camp, training camp, Adam McCrate is raving about this kid. And if Adam McCrate is in your corner, that's going to go a long way.
That's a strong corner. I did want to ask you about a player in the system that's a lot closer to the NHL, just because around here, Dom, you can back me up on this. Everybody seems to like the next person in line. and and Dom and I tried to bring a little reality to that situation where sometimes you just have guys that play in the AHL because that's their role. Whether it's helping some of the young guys, the higher talented young guys kind of adapt, or they're just not that NHL caliber on a regular basis. Last trade deadline, the Bruins pulled off a trade for former Bulldog Navrin Mutter. And I know that you got to see him for a few years when he was with the Bulldogs. Is he someone that the Bruins fans should focus attention on in Providence? Like I said, he's a little older, 25, 26. Or is he someone that people should just accept might be another Patrick Brown?
You know, if you're Patrick Brown, that's a pretty darn good career, right?
Absolutely.
Up and down with the NHL, a captaincy in Providence. Like Nav, first of all, he's a great kid. I adore Navrin Mutter. I got to know him really well. He sat behind me on the bus. I think it was for 2 seasons, driving around when we were still in Hamilton. Used to call him train number 15 because he was a locomotive on skates. He will blow guys up. He, you know, if somebody needs to drop the gloves to defend a teammate, he'll be the first in line to do it. Nav, as a skater, could play in the National Hockey League, but you got to have the right role for him to do it, and the Bruins don't have an opening where he would play. They've got Tanner Jeannot and they've got Mark Kastelik. So there's no spot for Navrin to come up and play. What I would say is get down to Providence to see him, because every night that he's on the ice, you're going to get something fun out of Navrin Mutter, whether it's a hit, a fight, or he has scored some of the damnedest goals I have ever seen. He's got a bomb of a shot. And, you know, there was one night where he put the puck through his legs and danced around. Like there's so many things that he can do that you wouldn't expect a guy who's been kind of cast as a fighter to be able to do. There's a skill level there with Nav, but there's just no opening for him in Boston. It's just that's what it is right now. With Kastelik and Jeannot already there, they've got that spot for a big physical, drop the gloves guy filled in spades. Nav's great to have in Providence. He's going to be great for the young kids to be around. He will be a leader for them. He'll be, you know, personal security for them. And that's what the Bruins need. They need a guy down there that if somebody's going to take a shot at one of these young guys they're going to bring through the system, then you got to have that guy who's going to step up and defend. And Nav's the perfect guy to do that. I could see him wearing a letter in Providence at some point if he stays long-term. He's that good a person.
Yeah, I think if you look up the definition of never takes a shift off, or or the definition of how to prepare yourself for a hockey game, you're going to find Nav's picture under both of them, and that's the type of person that you want younger players to learn from, not only on the ice but off the ice, and I think he brings that to the Providence table. I know everybody's about the NHL roster, but you need those types in the NHL or in the American Hockey League to teach your younger prospects, so they don't have to learn it at the NHL level.
Exactly.
One guy I want to talk to you about, because you've seen the bulk of his career to date so far, as Michael DiPietro. I don't want to say he's being thrown to the wolves this year, but he's earned the opportunity at the backup role in Boston. He's had the chance last year. Wasn't very good in preseason, and lost the opportunity. How do you think he's going to handle it coming up this season?
I think he's going to be great. I really do. I mean, you know, speaking as the voice of the Bulldogs, every time you would see Michael DiPietro's name on the game sheet for who we were going against, you went, oh no. This kid, he was the best goaltender in the Ontario Hockey League for a couple of years. And to see the development through the American Hockey League, he's been elite. And there is no other spot for him now. I mean, what he's done in the AHL, there's nothing left for him to prove there. It's time for him to come up and have a long, extended look as the number 2 to Jeremy Swayman. Now, here's where I think they had to be cautious with it last year. So Swayman was coming off of the year where, we had the holdout, the contract, and this and that, and he didn't have a great year. So coming back, you couldn't afford to move an NHL-tested backup goaltender, whether you loved him or you hated him, in Joonas Korpisalo. You couldn't do it at the beginning of last season to give DiPietro the run in case something happened with Swayman. Not that I don't think anybody thought anything was going to happen with Swayman, but just in case. Now we've seen the real Jeremy Swayman again. We know what Swayman is. He's an elite goaltender in the National Hockey League. Now it's the time for him to take the young guy behind him, or young guy, they're actually close to the same age than people realize, but the new goaltender to the NHL under his wing and be that leader in the crease. You're the number 1. You're the guy. Now we go to that. You're 1. He's the backup. The question is, can DiPietro earn more of a 1B as opposed to a 2? But if DiPietro just does what he did in Providence, then at the NHL level, then the Bruins are going to be absolutely fine between the pipes. I mean, if he has a 2.5 goals against and a .918 save percentage as a number 2 goaltender, you're doing fine. If he does anything better than that, then he's going to earn himself more space in the crease, more opportunity behind Jeremy Swayman. But I think it could be a great partnership between the two of them. And for salary cap purposes as well, having DiPietro behind Swayman opens up other options.
Absolutely. I will admit I am one of the ones that's concerned about his game translating to the NHL, just because there are some aspects to his game that I think his height does work against him. But I'm excited that he has the opportunity, because having watched him in Providence, he's, like you said, there's nothing left for him to prove there. So now we just have to see it. So,
and knowing that you have the rock for Swayman as your franchise goalie and that he's back to being himself, you can go out and get a 2 if you need to. You can go out and get a backup goaltender that's not going to break your cap, that's paid less than Korpisalo was, that you can, if something goes wrong with DiPietro, you can plug them in. I'm not worried about that. This is the opportunity for DiPietro to come up and show what he can do. Can you be that guy? Can you be the guy that we saw in the OHL? Can you be the guy we saw in the AHL and be a game changer out of that role? Play your role behind Jeremy Swayman and just give the Bruins a chance to win hockey games. He doesn't need to win a Vezina trophy. He just needs to give you the chance to win. And if he can do that, he could be behind Swayman for a long time.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about one other player that you know from the Ontario Hockey League is without a contract right now. We don't know where that's going, is Matty Poitras. First of all, your thoughts on the player, and are you concerned at all that he's without a contract right now?
Thoughts on the player first. Really like the player. I mean, we saw him in the OHL. Great mind for the game. Really good feet. Can handle the puck. Can play the center position at the OHL level and at the AHL level. Can we see this season perhaps if he can stick as an NHL center? I know he didn't look entirely comfortable playing on the wing in the NHL, and I think that's because for so long he played through the middle of the ice. I'm not overly concerned that he doesn't have a contract, just because they're with his contract status, there aren't a whole lot of other options. So it's either he's going to be with the Bruins or they're going to trade him and get something for him. Now, where does he fit is the question. If you're banking on James Higgins is going to be a center, Dean Letourneau is probably arriving in March, April, and your existing centers, Zaka's got another year. We'll see where that goes. Hampus Lindholm is still here. Elias Lindholm is still here. Fraser Minton is going to need a center spot. And then you've got, Sean Corrali, Mark Kastelik, a whole bunch of guys that could rotate in on that fourth line. Where are all these pieces going to fit, and where does Patra go if you bring him back? It almost leads me to think, between all the smoke that we've heard around Mason Lohrei, is Lohrei staying or is he being moved? Is Patra being moved? Kirill Marchenko is available in Columbus. Now, if you can't go and get a number one center, if you're going to go Zacha, Lindholm, Minton down the middle of the ice, then what do you need to do? You need to really fortify your wings. If Brunet is going to take a spot in Boston, you got too many. Well, you've already got too many defensemen. But if Brunet is going to take a spot, you've really got too many defensemen. Do the Bruins then look at Lohrei, Patra, at least one first-round pick and something else to go make a run at Kirill Marchenko or another winger who's either out of favor or looking for a move to come back and fortify the wings in Boston? Peterka is a great ad. Do they get that secondary guy? Because as much as I would like to see Patra play, I just don't know where he fits. It feels like Minton took the spot that would have been Patra's. If you're going to use Higgins at any point as a center, he doesn't have a clear spot in the top six, and you're not going to put him on the fourth line because that's not using Matty Patra to his best abilities. Could he do it? Yeah, sure, but that's not where he's going to excel, and that's not where you're going to get value from him. I don't think another season in Providence is – does he start there? Maybe. I don't see that really being the spot for him either. It feels like there's another shoe yet to drop this offseason as we get towards camp that hasn't dropped yet, and I think he might be one of the ones wearing the shoe.
But to go to Providence, he would need to clear waivers. Do you think he would clear waivers, Reed?
No, that's a great point. No. So they're going to have to move him without a contract or work some sort of sign-in trade, unless the play is you bring him to camp and see if he just flat out beats somebody out. That's possible. But at some point, you're going to have to figure out where all these puzzle pieces go, because you've got a lot of NHL bodies, both at forward and on the blue line, that guys aren't going to be happy as the 14th, 15th forward. They're not going to be happy as the 8th defenseman. The Bruins are going to have to make some hard decisions and move a couple of players out. Does Patra beat somebody for a job in the middle of the ice? That'll be, he's, like I said, he's not going to beat out Jeannot or Kastelic. They're not going to look for him there. He could beat out Sean Corelli, but I don't think they're going to use him there. They want Higgins to be a center, but he's not even guaranteed that spot. Could you beat Elias Lindholm out? Maybe, but I think people forget, as much as they've been disappointed with Elias Lindholm to the contract, he was playing at near 60-point pace last year. So if you move Elias Lindholm out, are you going to get 60-plus point pace out of Matt Patra plus the dominance in the faceoff circle that Elias Lindholm brings? I think he's got too many hurdles to really look at a guaranteed spot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Marchenko, and I know a lot of people are already starting to salivate on anybody who could possibly ask for out of Winnipeg after Hellebuck's deal. Now that his trade request has been public, so I'm starting to see all the fantasy hockey trades now for the Scheifele's and the Connors and Neil Pionks and Josh Morrissey's and Patra's pretty much in every single one of those. So
you had me at Kyle Connor.
Great goal scorer. I want to get to your roster decisions facing the Bruins this year, Reed. But first, my question is going to put you on the spot, because I promised I would have one for you. Although people question the 2026 draft decisions the Bruins have made, the past couple of years, they've done better. They've gone after the higher ceiling rather than the higher floor type players. Trent Frederick, Johnny Beecher come to mind in the past. With the Ontario Hockey League and the Western Hockey League, they've actually done okay with the Q. It's Freddie Brunet and Cole Chandler up and coming, and somebody else I'm missing. But in the O and the Dub, they've walked away from or traded guys like Ryan Mast or Brett Harrison or Reed Dick or Jackson Edward. And over the past few years, they've done nothing to increase or improve their scouting in the two leagues. Like, they don't have a dedicated WHL scout. They've got Bob Weddick in the O, and I know from going from arena to arena that the Ontario Hockey League is a rather easy league to scout unless you get to the northern teams.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'd like to see them get a dedicated WHL scout again. I think that would be helpful. I mean, I think we can all go back to 2008 and be a little gun shy after the Zach Hamilton pick, but at some point, you gotta have eyes everywhere, and I think that having a WHL scout would be beneficial. Somebody dedicated in that region. I know Bob quite well. Bob, I usually see him coming through the doors in Brantford. He's at a lot of our games. Great guy, and generally not alone. I mean, Bob is the dedicated OHL guy, but I mean, we've had a ton of Bruin presence over the last few years in our building. I can't speak for the other buildings around the league, just where I am. I don't always see the scouts, but some of the big names that you would recognize have been in our building quite a bit, including the Don himself. So it's they've definitely taken long looks at the OHL, and I think in terms of the OHL, they may not have been in the right spots to get some of the OHL players that they would have wanted. James Hagen's being on the board last year probably precluded them from, they looked at Jake O'Brien a lot. They saw
I know.
They saw a ton of Jake O'Brien, but Hagen's being there was too good to pass up. So I totally understand that decision. And Brady Martin had already been taken on, and Porter Martone were already off the board by the time it got to them. So I think there have been a few close calls like that where, they've had probably an OHL guy on the list, but somebody else higher. I think part of it goes to the fact that they've also really gone a long way in fixing a European scouting department that, I had bagged on about it for a long time that needed a new voice, and PJ Axelson has certainly been that, and they've done way better in Europe than they had for years and years. So I think we'll see it come back around in the OHL. I mean, Bob's at way too many games to not have some guys that he really likes get picked, and we see too many members of the Bulldogs front or the Bruins front office at Bulldogs games to not believe that eventually there will be more picks coming out of the OHL. Now, here's where I really believe it. We know the Bruins love their NCAA guys.
Yeah.
Well, now that OHL players can take the path from the OHL to the NCAA, I think that was the domino getting pushed, that now we'll see more OHL players who are on that pathway get selected to Boston. OHL, NCAA, Providence, Boston.
Chris?
I was going to say, do you think that might be because for quite some time now, many people have been kind of dogging on the Bruins development system. And so now it's funny that you say that because the NCAA, they might start taking these players that have a little bit longer of a ramp to the NHL. Do you think that is more of an indictment on the path that a player can take, or the confidence that they have in being able to be the ones to help them trudge through that path, if that makes sense?
No, it was an indictment on the pathway that was available. I mean, you've got a very limited window for guys in the OHL, and I think you're going to see a lot of younger, high-end talent in the OHL that's going to push these prospects forward to the NCAA. And now having that pathway available, you'll be in the younger, high skill Ontario Hockey League. Then you can go off to the NCAA, where you go from playing 68 games to 40, 45. And now you get a chance to build your body up for a year, 2 years in the NCAA, so that by the time you get to Providence, if you were originally drafted out of the OHL, you might not be 6 foot and 170 anymore. You might be 6 foot 6'1", 185. And what a difference that makes. Now you're ready to handle the grind of a pro season. It is so hard to see these guys try to make that jump from playing in the OHL right into playing American Hockey League games, unless you're talking about like your high-end first round, like a Porter Martone, who's a physical freak. It's hard to see them do that because you've got to be able to put that size on, and to make that jump, if you're looking at a 19 or even a 20-year-old that you're saying, we're going to bring him right out of his fourth year in the OHL right to the AHL, that's tough unless they're really just naturally thick. Like it's a really tough transition to go into playing that many games against men from playing junior hockey. So it's definitely something that's going to improve opportunity for players to develop themselves physically before they get into the real development to the AHL, NHL pipeline.
So I want to touch on the Bruins roster. We talked a little bit about the goaltending. That's not an issue. Setting aside the suspension to Charlie McAvoy to start the season, we've got 10 defensemen, 11 if you count Billy Sweezy, who will require waivers, but he's obviously destined for Providence. I mean, you got McAvoy, Lindholm, Borgen, Zadorov, who are locks on the NHL roster. And then you've got Mason Lohrei, Connor Clifton, Jonathan Aspero, Freddie Brunet, Jordan Harris, Henry Yoki-Haru, all vying for the 5 and 6 spot and 7 spot. I mean, you know Yoki-Haru well, even going back to his European days, who isn't really getting an opportunity under Sturm's system. But what do you see happening with the defense?
I think Jonathan Aspero takes a spot. I mean, he was a huge surprise last year, but he earned an opportunity and made the most of it all the way through the regular season. I think he's going to do the same thing again, so I count him on the roster. Connor Clifton, they brought him back for a reason, but I think Clifton ends up being a number 7 rotational guy. I really do. I look at the depth on that back end, and I just don't see him playing every single night. Now, he might have to start of the season with the suspension of McAvoy, but right. I think he's going to be a guy that, 1, great in the room, 2, a lot of electricity. Remember from the last time he was in Boston, he was at his best when he could spot into the lineup, sit out a night, 2 nights, then play 4 or 5 games to give that jump, then go back out for a couple games and kind of recharge the battery a little bit. That was when he was at his finest. So I think they have the depth to be able to do that with him again and be able to give guys nights off. Lohrei makes the team unless he's moved, and then Yoki-Haru gets moved. If Lohrei gets moved, Yoki-Haru is in, but I could see a world where they both end up getting moved and Frederic Brunet makes the team. They keep talking about Brunet, and there seems like there is a lot of belief that he is right on the doorstep of the National Hockey League. But to do that, they have to move bodies out to be able to open the opportunity to have him come in. So we'll see in training camp. Right now, I'm betting on the kind of chalk holding on that back end. But if Brunet pushes, then I think you see madness take place in terms of the trade market for the Bruins.
So you don't think a trade will happen until they know what Brunet is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think, unless maybe you move Yoki-Haru and that's your move to create your 7. But even then, with McAvoy missing off the beginning of the season, they may not feel comfortable doing that yet. But I think once you get into training camp, if Brunet blows the doors off, that's when you start seeing bodies flying everywhere.
And Harris is out, in your opinion, no matter what, right?
Yeah, I hate to do that because I love the player. I love what he can bring. But I think for me, when they signed Connor Clifton, that was kind of the spot where I thought, I don't see Jordan Harris making it over all of these other guys. I thought he played well in his looks last year. I think Jonathan Aspro kind of took a spot on him at one point there, and now he's kind of a man without an island.
Fitz, Chris?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with this cluster of defensemen. And, it like we were talking about, it's not just as easy as going, this is the guy that I'm sending down, because, they just went to Jordan Harris and convinced him to stay. And now they might have to tell him, hey, we were wrong, our bad. Like that fractures the relationship with the player and possibly an agent enough to, again, it's all in how you deal with the situation. If they're able to find Jordan Harris a home and take, future considerations for him, and they do well by the player in that regard, it might hurt the team a little bit because it hits their depth. But, that's the way that they have to save face. People are going to rip them for a future considerations deal, but, you got to play the game.
You got to do right by the player. You got to do right by and I'm sure they will in the case of a Jordan Harris, who, by all accounts, everybody loves the guy. So if we're in a spot where he's got to go, then I'm sure they'll go to him and do right by him. Again, he's a guy that I'd love to keep, and I think he'd be an asset, but they just have so many defensemen that I can't. They can't all be there. Somebody's got to move, and multiple somebodies likely are going to have to move. So I just don't see him leapfrogging enough guys for him to stick around and for him to be happy. He's not. If he's an eighth defenseman and he's sitting in the press box every night, is he really going to be happy? I doubt it. And I think at that point he would want to move. And I think the Bruins will do right by him and find him the right spot if and when it comes to that.
I wonder if the theory is if we put all four of them through waivers at the exact same time, we can't lose all of them.
Yeah.
Flip the zone.
Up front, there really is no questions other than what's going to happen with Patra and where James Higgins fits in. Just really quickly, Reed, I don't want to keep you much longer because I heard the kids in the background earlier and we're approaching an hour here. Where do you see James Higgins fitting in?
Start on the wing. Start on the wing on a line where he can learn. I mean, people are gonna hate me for saying it. I would love to see him spend some time with Elias Lindholm. I know I hear all the criticisms. I watch Elias Lindholm and I get a completely different take on the player than a lot of other people do. And I think part of that was because people were expecting him to come in and be a 90-point center. I never expected that out of Elias Lindholm. And look, for his contract at this point, when we're seeing some of the values that are being sent around the league now, if I can get 55 to 60 points and 55% the faceoff dot out of Elias Lindholm, and he can teach James Higgins how to play center at the NHL level, like Marty Lapointe taught Patrice Bergeron how to be a pro, that is worth every single penny that the Bruins would pay Elias Lindholm. So I think he starts on the wing. His creativity, his speed, it will translate well to the wing. Long term, I think he goes back to the middle. I think the only thing that could stand in the way of him going back to the middle is his old teammate, Dean Letourneau, showing up. Because I think by the end of the year, you're going to have those two together. And we know they play well as a pair with Letourneau in the middle and Higgins on the wing. So do we get to a point where Letourneau becomes the Bruins version of Tage Thompson, but playing through the middle of the ice, and Higgins is on his wing making things happen? And I know people, again, wow, they drafted him as a center, this, that. But think of where that could put you. If Pavel Zacha stays long-term, which the cap's going up to $125 million within the next 2 years, pay Pavel Zacha. Why wouldn't you? It doesn't make sense not to. You need centers. Zacha, Peterka, Pasternak, Higgins, and Letourneau. Hello. There's your core with Fraser Minton right in behind them. There's three lines that give you exactly what you're looking for in terms of speed, talent, creativity, size, there's a little bit of everything in there. And I left out Morgan Geekie, who probably takes that wing with Higgins and Letourneau. So you've got opportunity here to do something really fun with your forward core. But to bring it back around to where we started, Higgins for me starts on the wing with Elias Lindholm. I don't know who I put on the right side of that yet, but that's where I would go with that. I think you got to start with Peterka, Zacha, Pastrnak, and I love Husnudinov and Minton together. So adjust your other wingers as necessary, but I think that's where you could have some fun off the beginning of the season.
Interesting. Chris, anything to add?
No, I could talk about the lineup combinations all day. You know that.
Yeah.
There's so many different options. As I always say, Don Sweeney loves his versatility. And if you look at this entire lineup, there's so many different guys that, you mentioned Pavel Zacha. You can play down the middle. You can put him on the wing. You can move Elias Lindholm to the right wing if you needed to. Like, on all of this, like, it seems like the only person that really seems to be penciled into one spot as a center is Matty Patra, and he doesn't even have a contract right now.
Yeah. So.
Well, and further to that point, in talking about Pavel Zacha, if Higgins shows, if he just blows our expectations away and he shows immediately that he could be a top line center, that again gives you so many options to be able to move pieces around the chessboard, because then you could put Zacha into a role where he could go back with, a Casey Middlestat and a Morgan Geekie and create one heck of a line of, again, versatility if Higgins were to play with Peterka and Pastrnak. I'm not expecting that off the beginning, but could you get into a situation like that? Sure you could. Or you could have Zacha on a wing with Higgins and Pastrnak to help take draws, and then you move Peterka into a spot where he's away from top defense pairs. So the ability here to move pieces around this lineup is going to be great for the Bruins. And Chris, to touch on your point, I think long-term, that's where Elias Lindholm ends up, is by the time you have Higgins and Letourneau and Minton grows and, Pavel Zacha sticking around, I think he ends up on the right wing as his career comes further towards the end. But even still, if he's on your right wing, he's a weapon because you can slide him back over the middle to take draws, especially on the right side, where he's traditionally in the high 50s, low 60s on his strong side. It's just another art piece in your arsenal to be able to cause damage down the road and into a playoff series. If you've got, instead of 4 guys down the middle can take draws, you got 6 or 7, then opposing centers never know who they're going to end up having a draw against.
Exactly. It's a great weapon to have. Reed, I want to thank you for taking the time to not only talk about Bruins and prospects, but the Bulldogs and how great an organization they've become. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and hopefully we can do this again somewhere down the road.
Guys, I'd love to. Now that we've got a Bruins prospect in Brantford, it'll be great to be able to come on and give you guys some updates on how Cullen McCrate is doing. And Dom, you know me, I'm always up to talk Bruins. So it was great to see you again, my friend. Don't be a stranger at TD Civic Center, please. If we can get Chris up at some point, love to have you guys both up on Media Road.
An 8-hour drive, so.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. It's really a pleasure.
Absolutely, Reed.
Awesome. Well, I just to build on that, thank you so much. And I'll give the final thought here to Dom before we get going. We're just right around that hour mark. Dom or Reed, if either one of you want to have the final thought, because like I said, I could go on this lineup all day. It's funny because we didn't even mention Will Zellers and the future that he could have with this organization. And there are so many others, all the Europeans that we already talked about, and it keeps going.
The European invasion is coming, folks.
Yeah. That's it from me. Reed, thank you once again.
Thanks so much, guys. A pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And until next week, go Bees.
Go Bees.
Welcome to the Dom.Hockey podcast, proudly presented by Bench Rates. Created by a former hockey player, BenchRates uses a proprietary algorithm to assign a true monetary value to a player's on-ice contributions and lets you compare that value directly to his cap hit. BenchRates evaluates professional players across leagues worldwide, including the NHL and AHL. Learn more at benchrates.com. Also presented by McKean's Hockey. McKean's produces the premier NHL draft guide featuring more than 200 player reports and comprehensive rankings. They also deliver in-depth prospect coverage through their annual team-by-team rankings and their trusted hockey pool yearbook. Visit mckeans.com and subscribe for just $16.50 Canadian for 3